fans, welcome back to Room 237, back with another review, and it's time for yet another review of an A24 film. Yeah, I said I had more coming, and this is another, I guess you could put it in the horror category. It says horror comedy, but to be honest, I think it's more of a comedy horror. Now, I know it sounds like splitting hairs, but those really are two different things. Real quick, because I think a lot of people forget, horror comedy is, just a horror film that happens to be comedic, like Return of the Living Dead, Dead Alive, Reanimator, Evil Dead 2. And a comedy horror is a comedy film, first and foremost, with maybe a more horror setting, like Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead, Army of Darkness. And I see this one labeled as a horror comedy, but it really does feel more just like a comedy film, or a comedy with horror elements, like a comedy told horror film. And as far as A24 goes, this is one of the few that I'm actually mixed on. This is one that will be on my bottom 10 countdown. But as I've said before, even a lot of those movies I still do like quite a bit. There's only one A24 film I actually dislike. There's a few that I'm mixed on, like Tusk. This is one I'm mixed on. I'm really confused on how I feel about it. And it came out in 2018, and it is the horror comedy horror. I don't even know if it knows what it wants to be. Slice. Now, I had just heard about this film recently when I was going through A24's category, and what I thought it was at first was like another 80s slasher, maybe midnight movie kind of throwback, but done as a comedy, revolving around pizza delivery drivers. Now, it still is, but it goes so much beyond that, to the point where it is a really cool concept. It is a really fun, neat idea, but being A24, it should have gone way more deeper and way more clever with it than it really is. Also, it's only 83 minutes, which is actually kind of a detriment just because of how big and ambitious this movie's trying to be. So that is one of the detriments. If it sounds like I'm shaking a little bit, it's because it's freezing in here, so I apologize for that. It was written and directed by Austin Vesely, and it stars... I say stars, but there's so many characters in this that even the leads feel like they're not really in it that much. Zazie Beetz, who of course was in Deadpool 2, she was in Joker. Chance the Rapper, who I'm not familiar with at all. But also, let's see, Ray Gray, Marilyn Dodds Frank, Catherine Cunningham, Will Brill. You get cameos by Hannibal Buress, Tim Decker, and Joe Keery. So, but for all you Stranger Things fans, Joe Keery's only in it for like 2 quick scenes. He's not really in it that much. Also, Chris Parnell and Paul Scheer. So it is really made up more of a comedic cast. And for the most part, they do fine. Like, Paul Scheer was probably one of the funnier people of the movie. It did have a lot of stuff that landed, but it had a lot of stuff that didn't as well. Perhaps the best thing about this would be the score, which was done by Ludwig Göransson and Nathan Matthew David. Apart from having a hip-hop soundtrack, it has an awesome 80s synth type score, which, as soon as I heard it, and I was still kind of in the mindset it was going to be like this 80s slasher comedy, I was like, this is going to be awesome. I've already got this type of vibe. It's put out by A24. It's going to be super clever. It's going to be great. And to be honest, it feels more like an R-rated Goosebumps movie. It looks like a Goosebumps movie. It feels more Goosebumps or Halloween Town or something along those lines. Even the special effects, which are pretty awful, especially all the CGI, or even 2016 Ghostbusters level. And I really hate comparing it to that, but the special effects are kind of in that wheelhouse. Now, where this goes beyond just an 80s style throwback slasher involving pizza delivery drivers, and what makes the ambition and idea and concept really cool is I don't know if it's the entire world or just this small town where this takes place, but any kind of spook that you can think of is real and integrated into society. Ghost, ghosts, werewolves, witches, they're all just out and about. I mean, there's like a section of town for the ghosts. As soon as people die, we just see their ghosts and they're still part of society. They just have like the pale makeup, bags under their eyes. One of them even works at the pizza place. And so I was thinking, okay, it could have been even like Pixar clever. I mean, think about it like a Pixar movie, whether it's toys, cars, bugs, fish. It does such a great job at making like it's funny because it's true way of just showing our society lived by whatever the story is. And there's so much more to it. There's a murder mystery, there's political conspiracy, which is definitely why the like less than 90-minute runtime is a huge detriment, because there's so much is trying to tell that it feels half-assed. But so I like the idea that okay, there's this world, just ghosts exist, werewolves exist, and no one really questions it. It's just part of their life. It does give off this vibe of almost like the perfect like October movie, like the perfect thing to watch around October and Halloween. But the comedy is so. There are a lot of jokes that land. I mean, yeah, Paul Scheer is funny, like I said. But then when the comedy is bad, I legitimately cannot tell if it's just poor writing or if it's going for such a cheesy B-movie feel and it's super dedicated to it that even the bad jokes are intentional, because there are a lot of bad jokes as well. And for the most part, like the back and forth dialogue outside of the jokes is pretty bland. It's not very well written, save for maybe the story, which does not feel fleshed out at all. And sadly, even with a concept like that, the most clever thing about it is probably the title, Slice. This sort of slasher. Now, I can't really call it a slasher because there's so much more going on, but the pizza delivery drivers being killed. Slice. Okay, that's honestly probably the most clever bit about it. And being A24, I would have accepted, something like The Lobster, something really dry, awkward, almost like The Office type humor. I think that would have fit very well. But yeah, these pizza delivery drivers are being killed. The mayor, played by Chris Parnell, and this sort of activist group made up of stereotypical Karens are trying to make it sound like it's ghosts. Ghosts are kind of marginalized, trying to make it sound like they're responsible. And come to find out, you have, not that it matters, but the police seem to think that it's this werewolf, played by Chance the Rapper, who some years ago, there was some more slangs, I think at the Chinese restaurant, where this werewolf worked. He ran away and now some years later, it's this pizza place. They think it's him. So the police think it's this werewolf. The mayor and this activist group are trying to convince everyone that it's ghosts, mainly so they can just tear down the strip mall for whatever reason. And that's the thing. You have this seemingly intricate murder mystery with conspiracy and motives, but it doesn't feel fleshed out at all. One thing I've heard a lot of people say is that, yes, the runtime does hurt it, but if this was like, you know, a 6-episode series or like a 10-episode limited series where they could really flesh out this world, flesh out this murder mystery, really get into the politics of this town and everything, then it really could have stretched its legs with how clever it could have been. And instead, it just comes off as half-assed. It half thought out. Even the performances, I'll say Chance the Rapper is one of the better ones. I was expecting a lot from Zazie Beetz because I really like her in a lot that I see her in. But even a lot of her scenes, like most people, just comes off as kind of bored. And you have this journalist trying to solve it. You have Zazie Beetz kind of doing her own a vigilante type digging because her boyfriend is the first kill of the movie. And then you got everything going on with the mayor, and I don't know if I should say spoilers, because even though I didn't, kind of my own fault, I didn't know this was going to be the revelation. However, once this is revealed, when you think back to it, it's like, well, that was fucking obvious. And then every reveal after that, you catch on to it before they even tell you. The activist group are witches. Now, one, I should have been able to catch on to that because half the town is dead people. There's a werewolf. There's this group of women. Probably should have figured it was a coven. So then I was like, oh, wow, I'm stupid. I didn't even catch on to that. But then there's like scenes where this one chick that works at the pizza place, as soon as they say like, you haven't heard? Astrid was killed last night. Oh, jeez. God. Oh, I have to grab something. It's like, okay, you're in on it. So, like, every reveal after that seems very obvious. And then there's and this movie just keeps building to the point where I think it's just part of the absurd, like, some of the comedy is just with how absurd this movie is. Like how this pizzeria is built on a gateway to hell, which kind of doesn't really do anything, but it's like it just keeps escalating. And I think some of the comedy is just like with how, because there's this running gag where the dead guy that works at the pizzeria, he's talking kind of like Pascal from Pet Sematary, like, the ground is hollow. You must not blaspheme. You must, like, very sort of cryptic, creepy ghost talk. But everyone just, especially Paul Schreer, just completely dismisses him. Like, Joe, please, I'm trying to sell some pizza. It does have some funny moments, like when they go down in the basement, they find out a gate from hell. There's some janitor cleaning. We're supposed to believe it's a ghost. And he's like, ghost? I'm not dead. Sees his dead body. Oh, damn it. I mean, it does get kind of clever. Like, Zazie Beetz gets stabbed. She falls, then stands up like, oh, did I just die? The camera literally goes, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Damn it, that sucks. I'm even trying to think of some of the funnier. And then one thing early on that did make me think, okay, this is going to be very dry I'm really gonna like it. That guy Joe, he's given another pizzeria driver, like the the ground is hollow. That's not what he's saying. I'm just giving generic. The spirits will rise. Something, something, something. He's like, oh, in your order, you forgot the delicious dipping sticks. I was like, okay, that's awesome. That's that kind of dry, random, kind of absurd humor I was hoping for. And granted, it doesn't go to fart jokes or anything like that. It doesn't go 2016 Ghostbusters. But then you got the whole subplot of, like, the two detectives, one of which really wants Chance the Rapper to be the killer werewolf. He holds a grudge because his dad was killed by a werewolf. And he's super over the top. Like, he's always just, yeah, you think so? Well, I'm trying to solve a case. Like, and again, I really can't tell if that is meant. This movie really has me stumped. Because part of me wants to believe that all the over-the-topness and bad jokes is part of it, rather than it just being a comedy that's falling flat. But I really did have higher hopes for this. Not too much. I know this is one of the lower rated horror films by A24, but just the concept alone, even what I thought it was, okay, 80s throwback slasher, delivery drivers, okay, awesome. But then they set up this world where it's like Halloween all the time, essentially, where it's all dead people and werewolves and witches, and I was like, okay, yeah, awesome. And being A24, it should be able to flesh this out in a very clever way. But there's just so many characters and so much going on with so little time that it doesn't feel fleshed out at all. And so then we get to the special effects where the witches constantly, they have the green light, green electricity that literally does look straight out of like the Goosebumps movie or Ghostbusters 2016. I mean, it is bad CGI. Chance the Rapper, we only see him as a werewolf once towards the end, and that's really bad CGI. And of course, it takes like the Twilight route when he changes back, is just kind of like the CGI transform back, which I call blasphemy because I'm of the belief that werewolves turning into or back to human is supposed to be painful as shit. Yes, Wolfman didn't do that, but still, that, to me, that's a werewolf. I know it's a cheesy comedy. And to be honest, one of the best parts is the ending. The very ending is a sort of commercial for this new pizza place, pretty much where all the characters are dead. And it's like this bad old TV green screen quality. Paul Schrader's like, hey, I'm Jack, and I want you to come down to Jack's Perfect Pizza. And everyone's just awkwardly, like, even Zazie Beetz is like, all pies are hot. Something else, something else. And no employee murders. Just everyone's really dry, and you can tell they're reading off something, and it's just this really bad ad. That was probably the funniest part of the movie. That was the kind of humor that should have been throughout. But yeah, a lot of the comedy fell flat. It really is a shame that it had this really cool concept of just this town with every kind of monster you can imagine. Mostly, I don't think there's vampires or guild people, but, and then with like a murder mystery that's very obvious, and trying to incorporate conspiracy and politics and everything. A24 should have had this in the bag. This is one you could have pushed to 2 hours to really flesh all that out. And one thing I have heard people say is it kind of turned with the concept and the route they're trying to go story-wise. This should have been a very clever, dry comedy. Maybe not dry, but very clever. But it ended up being just a rushed, cheesy stoner comedy. Like, and just the tone of it. The tone and look of it feels more like a comedy horror than it does a horror comedy. You know, it does have more of like a Zombieland, but cheaper type look to it. Like, it doesn't even feel like a horror film. But yeah, not sure what else I could say about Slice. Probably one of the more disappointing ones that I've seen. Not that my expectations were really high, but I was kind of excited to see what A24 could do with this kind of material. Like, Tusk is more of a horror comedy. This, I don't even know if this really knows what it wants to be between horror comedy and comedy horror. And maybe if it had just taken itself a little bit more seriously, and also fleshed out the concepts a bit more, then maybe we really could have had something. Other than that, the best part about it is the synth soundtrack. That was really the only thing that really made me feel like, okay, we're in an 80s slasher film or 80s horror film. That's really cool. Even the opening line by Zazie Beetz, like something to the effect of, I want to tell you a story. A story that involves, what'd she say? Ghosts, a werewolf, and a shitty pizza place. Like, awesome. That sounds like a good opening line. But yeah, the cast feels underutilized or bored. And I feel like they should have just gone all out with everything. Like, the slasher deaths should have been bloodier, gorier. I mean, go all out. The ghosts were more like zombies, really, because the ghosts weren't transparent. They just gave them, like, the pale makeup, whatever wounds they had. So they're actually more like zombies, I guess. But yeah, it definitely going to be in the top 10 worst or least favorite A24 films. Even though this isn't a film I fully dislike, there's still only one A24 film that I do dislike. And that'll be in that countdown. So I have a few more of my A24 lists that I want to check out and review before I get to the countdowns and collection videos. But yeah, this is for 2018's Slice. So thank you for watching.